where I sit.
because it's
You all set, Scott? Okay.
Christmas Eve.
Good evening and welcome to the Southwest Vermont Supervisor Union Board of Directors meeting. And we'll start the meeting off with public comments, if any. And not seeing any public and no comments. We'll go right to the number 2. And first order of business is to the SVSU Board would like to offer the superintendent a 2-year contract effective July 1, 2015. The year that he's in now, the 2014-15, would stay the interim and change July 1, 2015. And the board would engage in a negotiations on the terms of those 2 years, which will run to 2017.
You making that?
I'm making, yeah, I need a motion and a
I'll second it.
second, okay. Any discussion? Leon?
I just want everybody to know that it's early in the life cycle of the superintendents, but we wanted to go out and gather information. When I said life cycle of the interim superintendent's 1 year here, that's a term you can identify with. That we wanted to go out and get information as soon as possible in terms of the various areas of the responsibilities with the different boards, the community members and board members and principals and so forth along that line, and bring all that information back in to see where we stood before we try to make a decision to extend things out here. And I just want everybody to know that with all the comments that we got, and we got a ton of them back, and we got a high percentage of response, which is about 79% of the people that got surveys responded back, which was good. That all of these things that we got and saw were in a positive manner, and so I think it would be the right thing to do in terms of what we're talking about doing now is making an offer for the superintendent in light of all these particular comments and the progress they've made thus far in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor of the motion? It's unanimous.
Done.
You're an alternate, right?
Right, so I'm not voting
There you
because I'm an alternate.
Okay.
I just want to thank the board. I'm very pleased and honored. And I take the challenges ahead of me seriously. And I look forward to working with you, all of you, to move forward for the supervisory union and for all our districts. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay. Yep.
Would there be an opportunity to share some of the comments as we would in a normal evaluation of the superintendent?
Sure.
Not necessarily in this
Sure.
session, but
Yeah, it would be my opinion that it's probably public record, right?
Yeah, I would assume so.
At least the composite results, I
Yeah.
think.
Good. Okay. All right, next is the finance operations, but, okay, so Rick's not here.
And we don't have a warrant for you.
Right,
because
and
of
there's
the early
no
meeting.
warrant.
You do have a treasurer's.
There is a treasurer's report. Anything on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, I need a motion to accept.
So moved.
Okay, in a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Okay, new business. If you look down on number 5, I just want to change this around a little bit. There's personnel, and there's A and B. There's a new position. That may have to be, if there's any questions about that, we would probably have to do that in executive session. Is that, Wendy, is that with you?
That's me, that's correct.
Okay, are there going to be any questions about that new position?
Well,
I would assume there is.
I would request an executive
Okay,
session.
all right.
yes, definitely.
Okay, so that's the motion, George?
Yes.
Yeah, and Leon seconded it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go into executive session. We'll go right next door again. to go out of executive session?
Second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, we are now back in open session. And with the number 5, the personnel, the 2 position changes, I need a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Okay, that's Cindy and
That's
both of-
A, right?
Both of them, or just?
You're doing them separate?
doing,
Position change.
do you want them separate? I was gonna do them both. All right, we'll do them separate.
We'll do them separately.
Okay. On position change, number A, letter A rather, we've already had a motion and a second, so all in favor of that position. Okay,
Opposed.
opposed, that's, you got Larry, okay. On letter B, the new position, need a motion and a second for that then.
Motion made.
Second it.
Okay, Cindy and Leon again. And all in favor of that position? Okay, that appears to be unanimous. Okay. All right. Consent agenda, number 6.
Motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second it.
Leon, Cindy and Leon again, okay.
Hey, can I say one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to bring it into the open. So the designation as paraeducator and paraprofessional should be corrected to one or the other.
And, yeah, I think Wendy had said she'd do that.
But that was an executive session. I want to say it publicly, that should be.
Okay, okay.
There's no difference between the two.
I don't see a problem with that,
Thank
so
you.
that's fine.
Could we
Okay.
stipulate that it's paraeducator since we are about education?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Right, that was the question.
we need a motion for that or something? or-
No.
You should, no, I think it's, they'll
Just a sense
they'll
of
take care, they'll
more.
change that. Okay, so we got the minutes. October 27, any changes?
I did get a couple of changes from Ray, who did some pretty close reading. I don't think I need to go through them, but.
Okay, no, that's fine, if you've got those.
They're pretty minor changes.
Okay, there are no warrants, there's no resignations, there is a retirement. Leah Pesh, the school psychologist. Leave of absence, Michael Callahan, FMLA leave, family leave. And we have also number 6 nominations. Ellen Morandi, a paraprofessional, Molly Stark, and Crystal Boyle, paraeducator, Monument.
You need a motion on all of them?
No, I want to take them all together if we could. I don't,
I'll make a motion, we approve them.
okay,
Second it.
all right, that's George and Leon. Okay, any discussion? Ray?
On the 2 additional para positions, these relate to the new position that we approved?
I believe so.
Yes.
One doesn't, and one is they're filling of an open position.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay. One no?
Abstention.
One, okay. All right. Okay, policy's done. Next, superintendent's report.
Good evening. First, let me say one thing that was going to happen tonight, and thank you, Ray, for reminding me to mention why it's not going to happen. You had asked for a report on the Common Core in a previous meeting. Was going to do that tonight, but because of a phone call I received earlier this week, I'm going to postpone that to the December meeting. Earlier last week. A week ago today, I got a call from the state auditor's office asking me about my knowledge of the MGT study from 2010. You all remember that study?
Yes.
So the auditor went on to tell me that then 2 years later, in 2012, they came on site for an on-site visit to see how many of the recommendations you moved forward on. And what they were calling to tell me is that they're coming back now 2 years later in 2014 to review where we are on those recommendations again. So I want to give you a little review of what we have before us. And so look, that call was on Tuesday, then they scheduled a conference call with me on Friday to bring up to speed to what their expectations are. I'm going to hand out to you, and I don't expect you all to read it tonight because this is going to come back again in a previous meeting when I tell you what the timeline is. But here's the recommendations and where we answered, we were on them. There should be extra copies. Where we answered to the auditor's office what our response was 2 years ago, as far as where we were, whether they were implemented, partially implemented, no action taken. There's a lot of them. Let me give you a little bit of background, just in case you weren't here at that time, and why this report, the best that I've been able to find out why this report happened in the first place. So, when I read the executive summary of the report, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, it says the SVSU was invited to volunteer for the performance audit. I don't know if that is everyone's understanding here, but that's what it says in the report. So when I asked the auditor how we were selected, just so that I can have a little background on this, how it was selected that we had it, and here's a quote from then State Auditor Tom Salmon. The genesis for this audit in Bennington occurred after an initial attempt to attain buy-in from a supervisory union in Addison County that failed. In other words, they asked for another supervisory union to volunteer to do this. Told that Tom Salmon had deep concern about education in Vermont and felt that with talks about declining public school enrollment, decreased revenues at state levels, the cost of education coming under greater scrutiny, that has prompted many school systems in Vermont to identify opportunities for increased efficiency and effectiveness. So that was the driving force behind it. And then it goes on to say that they met with Superintendent McClure in May of 2009, and which was shortly after she had been hired as the new superintendent. And it was agreed that the supervisory union would volunteer for this study. So that's why we're kind of in this process. I was surprised to hear that they're coming back again, and here's the timeline. They want me to answer these implementations or non-implementations in an expedient enough manner that they can move forward with them by the end of this calendar year. So, yeah. They would like them somewhere in the vicinity of the 15th of December so that they can be give and take back from us. I don't know if that's going to be achievable. There are 26, in what I've handed you out, 26 recommendations that we claimed 2 years ago were partially implemented. And there are 11 recommendations that we just stated they were not implemented. And that doesn't talk, so they want a response from me on both partially implemented and not implemented, which means 37 recommendations, along with evidence of why they are or are not. I will put a group together. This is what I told the person at the auditor's office that I was speaking to again today, that I am not going to give them any document that I have not brought to this board first, so I will begin to prepare responses, gather evidence, and present it to you where I am by your next board meeting, and try to be in compliance with what they want. I did have a joint conference with Dr. Schiller on Friday. I'm sure those of you who were there at the time remember his name. And you know, there have been some changes in the law too since this report was done, particularly allowing one of the recommendations is that we the supervisory union should be providing pre-K education throughout the supervisory union, and we know that the legislators have done that for us. So read it at your leisure. I will welcome any comments from you, and I might be asking the chair for some assistance from board members who would, because some of the questions are directly, the beginning questions are directly at board activities, and there are ones on special ed, there are HR, business operations, pretty extensive. And I'll let it go to questions before I continue.
I just want to say that we had Dr. Schiller come and speak at a group, and I believe that there was even a problem within the people that wrote that report and Dr. Schiller. And I think that he has extracted himself from that report. Now, there's got to be minutes somewhere on that. That's number one.
I know he's no longer employed by MGT.
And I think that you'll find out that there was a major disagreement with that. Second item, I remember bringing up at the supervisory union on more than one occasion, and we as a supervisory union have never discussed that report as such. I used to bring up parts of it. Do you remember that, board members? When this big thick report that we got. Maybe there's some board members here that never got that report. It's got to be 70, 80, or 90 pages long.
It's 140 pages.
Oh,
I
yeah.
dug it out today.
So, Jim, I think before you get too deeply involved in this thing, that we back up a little bit and find out, because Dr. Schiller is not part of this anymore. There was a major disagreement in the report.
He might not be part of MGT, but in
He's
the conference,
separated.
right, in the conference call that I had with the auditor's office was a conference call with Dr. Schiller, who was in North Carolina, the state auditor's office. This was on Friday. They were going to send him to our district this Friday to meet with us. I said, wait a minute, I need some time to read this and become acquainted with it.
The full report.
No, all they sent me on Friday was what I just gave you tonight. And then today I pulled out the full report. So Dr. Schiller might not be associated with MGT anymore, but the state auditor's office is still connected to him and wants him to do the follow-up. What I worked out with him on the phone on Friday is I really didn't see why it was necessary for him to come to Vermont this Friday and meet with me. I'm capable of reviewing the documents, coming up with an action plan of how we want to address it, and we can do that, any action that we're going to take over the phone or through, email or whatever. But there is a question about it, how long does this report last? And one of the questions, I discussed this with the central office administration today. We have an admin team meeting every Tuesday morning, so they received this document this morning from me. And one of the problems, I consider this like a NEASC report, all right? I mean, the implications are stronger, but when we go through a NEASC report at the high school, those recommendations that we get from the visiting team, we either accept them, we implement them, some of them we just reject. There's nothing here that says reject. And a lot of the recommendations that I see that say partially implemented probably should have been better labeled, we just reject that recommendation. I mean, there are some in here that, I'm not going to say defy Vermont stature, but are certainly contradictory to it. Or, that some of the recommendations they make even for board action is, in all probability, it's just not going to happen. So I think we might have to step up or we should have said 2 years ago, we reject that recommendation, because we said it's partially implemented, I'm not surprised they came back and said, okay, tell us what you've done in the past 2 years on it. So I don't have that answer this early into the process to say, can we just say, no, we're not doing that one.
So I think it's sort of the maybe answer the question that I'm going to have, but I wasn't here in 2009, 2010. For others who weren't and who may not be familiar with the sort of the context, do we have an obligation to respond, a legal obligation or a moral obligation
I think
to
it's a valid question.
anyone?
What-
And I'm a little uncomfortable with an outside agency that may have no authority coming in and saying, please, 3 weeks from now, deliver a lengthy report.
I guess their initial authority came from they paid for the report. I'm familiar with MGT and the auditor's office. When I was at the Creative Elements Center, they had a governance study by MGT, but they paid for it themselves. So there really was, they could do whatever they wanted with the report. So the obligation comes from the auditor, but I don't know, this report was 4 years ago, so I don't know how much effort we have to put into replying to all of this.
Could I just follow up?
Yeah, because I'm gonna follow
But
you.
going back to David's question, I think out of fairness to those board members that were not members of the board when this took place, that they should be given a copy of this original 100 and something.
I'm actually going to make sure that it's on our website, the 100, but anybody who wants a copy, I had this discussion with Mary Lee today. She goes, well, you want me to make a copy for everybody else? I said, well, let's save a few trees first. It's 140 pages long. So I gave you just the extract of the recommendations. I started reading it today. I mean, this is it here, and this is double-sided. This is what it is.
I've read the 100 and something pages 3 times. I can quote from it.
I agree everyone
And
should
there's
see
a lot
it.
of garbage in there, and I
Yeah.
really think that David and those people that were not here should be given a hard copy of that report so they can get into it, if we're gonna spend time on it.
Either way, because of the process going on, I'm going to make sure that it gets up onto our website.
Okay.
And anyone who wants a hard copy, I will be glad to see that we print one out and give that to you. You want?
And I also think that you should extend it. I mean, you should ask for an extension. This is crazy for you to take the time
Yeah.
when we have so many other important, not that this isn't important,
Right.
but more important issues that's going to take your time.
Some of the recommendations will be done quickly. Some, might incite you, knowing Pownell and its busing issue and what its recommendations should happen on school buses that are in here. I didn't obviously have time to read the whole thing today, but you will find it interesting as you read it, because a lot of the issues that we've talked about in the past 4 years, some of it does come from here, and it's not, how good of a snapshot is it when somebody comes in briefly into your supervisory union school district and makes recommendations? And I always ask a couple of questions in my own head, as I'm sure you do. What was the motivation behind it? And why did we volunteer to do it when somebody else rejected it? And it clearly, and it's a touchy subject, but it's clearly had consolidation in mind. That was one of the driving forces. That's, this seems to be what the state keeps bringing up, and why the auditor was, when we're talking about saving money and efficiencies, some of the answers that say that they're not implemented is because the red study committee folded and took no action, so we're not taking any action. So we say partially implemented. To me, should have been, we rejected it. If the red study went away, we rejected. So some of it just might be that. So the second part of my superintendent's report. Oh, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say, in all fairness to those individuals back there, that one, you said, we were given all a copy of the report. And we started to go through it, and the rationale behind it. We had issues that we wanted to make sure that somebody came in and looked at this district with another set of eyes in a different way than it had been looked at before. So that's what we wanted. And we got the report, and a lot of things in here, when we talk about board consolidation, when you talk about your meetings and how you do, we started to do those things. And I'm saying formally, we didn't sit down and have a meeting and says, we're just gonna go page by page through this thing. But a team was put together because you got a response here
Yeah.
and doing those things. But you had a lot of those things that we said were good, that we thought we should be doing. In fact, I think we had the finance office that said, hey, we're doing a lot of these things already. I mean, combining certain things that they were talking about, we were already doing these kind of things. So I just wanted to be fair with the people in the past that says, hey, they made a lot of efforts. We wanted this thing. It was something that we needed to have look at this district with an extra outside set of eyes. But if we need to come back and say we wanted to formally go through this thing a different way, then that's okay to do that.
There's over
Along that line.
60 recommendations in the original.
Right.
So we have 37 outstanding. So clearly, action was taken
Yeah.
and correct, if, on many of the items. And there were already efforts and done, and I don't mean to imply that there wasn't.
But he's right. I think I was chair at the time, and we never did sit down with this paragraph for paragraph. and
I told the
discuss
auditor's office today I was bringing it to the board discussion tonight, and that you're going to be hearing it cold for the first time. And my response to them will be now that if we're going to do this with any type of meeting, then we can't rush it with 1 month. And just because their deadline is, because they want it by the end of this year, then our response will be that we'll do this, and we'll take this on with a serious review, but we can't do it under their timeline. If that is the wish of this committee, I'll be glad to deliver that message. And still, I will still pursue it, but you're right, and that should, and throw in, the Thanksgiving holiday and the approaching Christmas holiday, there's not that many work days between now and when they want this.
Need a motion?
And not only that, Jim, we've got we've put a lot of stuff on your lap that are more important, in my opinion, than this, right now, that has to be taken care of.
Well, budgeting alone plus negotiations, there's plenty on your plate.
And that comes down back to, I think, Dave's question. I think it was Dave, well, with what authority does the auditor's office have here? And no disrespect to the auditor's office, but we can get to this. But, it's not like we're violating, as far as I know, a law or a regulation, and there's a penalty. What's the penalty if we take 2 months to do this? Is what I guess I would ask, as opposed to if we rush and get it done.
And we're not even the district that denied them. We accepted them, so they got to go in
right.
now.
Would you like a motion, Jim, with us giving you authority to hold us in abeyance for up to 6 months or something?
I don't know if I need a motion. I'm going to say that.
Just a consensus.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. I have a consensus from the board that we're requesting more time so that we can form the right committee to review these, and that I have time to go through it and make recommendations to the board on what action you want to take, if any, on these recommendations. So unless I hear otherwise strong from any individual board member, that's the message I will deliver tomorrow.
So,
Okay, but one last thing.
Yeah.
If I remember right, Cindy, correct me, I think that after this report was done, Tom Salmon did come down to a board meeting.
He did.
yes, he did.
And wanted to know what's going on. And of course, he's no
Well,
longer there.
Right.
Okay.
Well, actually, he came down to a board meeting with his right-hand person.
Right.
And made a presentation about the report.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I think that was in the spring of 2010, maybe,
Yes.
that he came, and then I don't know yet who came, if there was a site visit 2 years later in
Personally, I think.
2012.
I think we were asked to accept it, and there was implied veiled threat. It was going to happen no matter what. Be that as it may, it happened. They sent the return visit by Dr. Schiller 2 years later, and I suppose they're acting on the original impetus to have the audit to follow up and 2 years thereafter. I certainly support your ability, your willingness to say, you know, well, we'll have to do it on our schedule because we have many other important things to do. And I think it should be, I would propose that this board vote as sort of the assent of the board to your saying that to the auditors.
And I will make
propose
sure that the full report is posted, because even though if some of you might have had it 4 years ago, I don't know if you kept it, and you might want to go back and read it.
Yeah. If it's possible
I still have it, I gotta dig it out.
to do it in, you know, if I can give you a thumb drive and you can download
Yeah,
it.
I could do that.
I'd rather not have the paper copy. So.
I could actually email it to you, if you want that.
It's pretty
'cause-
big. You might do it in parcels.
Okay. Because it was,
That
that's
would
how
be
I.
okay with me.
Because I asked, I had the full report emailed me today, so I do have it electronically, so I could do it
Thank
that
you.
way. How about if I make sure that it gets posted on the website, but I will email it to every board member? All right, and then if you still want a hard copy, then we'll get you, respond to my email, could you send me a hard copy, how's that?
Well, if you're going to post it on the website, you can always download it
Okay,
to
well, so not everybody might have the ability to
To,
print it out too, so that's all.
Yeah, I'll
Google
read it
Drive,
out.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'll read it on the computer.
And
Okay.
is that it on that? Any other questions or comments on that, Pat, before I?
Well, we didn't vote on my little motion that
Oh.
we say that we support you.
Second it.
There you go, okay.
Can you read the motion back?
The motion was that we give our assent to Jim's position, that he will talk to them about that we can't do it on their time schedule most likely, but that we will pursue it in a reasonable time frame for this SU.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Already did.
oh, Leanne seconded it.
Johnson.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hopefully not. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Looks unanimous. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that motion. The only other thing I want to mention in my report tonight, and some of you have heard me already say this at your local board meetings, and you'll hear me say it at MAU and Pownell next week, as I complete the monthly circuit
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. Thank you. As I complete the circuit next week, I mean, again, tomorrow. Legislative breakfast that I attended in North Clarington, Vermont last week with many of our state reps and senators. You should be aware, I mean, you heard me say this in Shasberry. Contact your state rep and let them know early on in the process how you feel about consolidation. This kind of ties to this report. A pretty lengthy discussion about the process that happened last year and what was going on between the House and the Senate and how late it got to the Senate. And they, to a person, stated that this is definitely coming up to the agenda again this coming year because of the pressures on finance and everything else. So I'm not saying where you should be in that argument. I'm just saying that if you have a strong position, I think now is the time to let them know. Because one thing that they said, and that's the message I want to bring back to you, is the process started a little too late in the legislative session, and the Senate got it too late. And there was feeling in the room that there is something going to happen, or be proposed anyways. The discussion will be there. So I think the earlier you're in on that discussion, the better. And it just, everything from this report rising again to those comments, I think we would be foolish to ignore it. And if you have a strong position, let it be known. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Okay.
Fred,
Go ahead, George.
Fred, in view of what Jim told us, is there any possibility of having an a meeting with our new elected legislators, and let's get it going.
I've got that on my report,
oh.
to have a if there's any chance to have a legislative breakfast, so we can air our thoughts. I know people are talking about the pre-K. We want to try to slow that down a little bit so we can, I mean, it's going to be some financial impacts on everybody's budgets that it's going to be tough. And I don't know what their schedules are, but I don't believe they're up there yet, so.
I don't know why I thought there was one, I'm looking at my calendar right now, I thought there's a tentative date in December for that, but, because I thought they said they wanted to get past the elections, but I'm not seeing it on my calendar right now, so I will.
All right.
I will look into that
Yeah,
also
check on
and see
that.
when that'll be scheduled.
And other than that, I have nothing else.
I have one question for
Yeah,
Jim.
go ahead.
It's actually under FYI, but every month we get this nice detailed student population report, and it's showing that year over year, the student population is down 6.5%. This is part of the whole argument with cost, is the population is down, so my question is, I know you've been working to get a handle on it.
Yeah.
Do we have a definitive number of employees that you can report on a monthly basis, so we can track the two together as we're in the budget season? That's what we're,
We do, and you bring up a valid point. Those of you who have seen my presentation on your local board meetings, and you'll see it in panel tomorrow night, I condensed the video that was presented at the Vermont School Board Association, Vermont Superintendent's Association, the joint regional meeting, which was a video presentation, but I did it to a PowerPoint. And one of the two most telling slides is the decline in student population, yet the level number of teachers and paraeducators that have remained in the state of Vermont in roughly the same time period. And so the question is, why and what's the impact of that? So for your question, I was pretty much ready, but all employees currently employed by all school districts, the supervisory union, and in all categories, teachers, paraeducators, and others. And the others would be listed as secretaries, custodians, off-contract employees, the treasurer, principals, technology, technology department, central office employees, off-contract employees at the supervisory union. The total number is 653 people, and the total number of full-time equivalents, because some are part-timers, is 629. So that's where we sit as today, but that is always a moving number, because I'm also informed, and thank you, Joy, for these numbers, I'm informed that we currently have 12 vacant positions across all the districts and the
Above this.
supervisory union. So
above this.
above that number, so there's 12. So currently, the full-time equivalent, 129 today, and that number fluctuates.
I think the entire board would appreciate this number on a regular basis, so we can see how we're trending.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you count our 6 bus drivers?
I imagine we did.
Is there any data that would break this down? Certainly, you can break it down currently by the categories that you enumerated when you started your preamble to the number. Is there anything that would show us over a period of time those relative numbers in those categories? It's always a snapshot, so
Right.
it's a snapshot at a particular point in time because it can vary during the year.
Yeah, I think we probably could put that, because one of the,
I'm just wondering if it could be graphed.
yeah, I would like to do that, because what I've told the boards that I've already presented to is, I showed statistics for the state of Vermont. Here's how many students there were in the state of Vermont 10 years ago. Here's how many are here now. What was the teacher count 10 years ago, what it is now? And what I've said is, my next mission is to project that into our own school districts and look at a historical timeline on that, because you're right, a snapshot of one day. I don't know if that, that could reflect a decline from where we were 10 years ago.
We don't know.
I can't sit here and tell you that. So
Right.
we'll,
And the fact that we don't know those trends for our own district is, something we probably should know.
Yeah,
I'm getting a nod in the back of the room that we can work on that. Yeah.
When you say 629
Yeah.
full-time equivalent
Well, the
teachers,
equivalent, yeah.
you're talking about the combined total of BSD and MAU?
Yep, all school districts and all category of employees. Yeah, I could, because the total number of teachers from the SVSU all the way through Woodford is 360. You have 154 para-educators, SVSU all the way through Woodford, and you have 139 others. And as I said, other is technology office, central office employees, your treasurers, your off-contract people, secretaries, custodial, and your principals. That's where that other category for it. So it's, that answer your question? Yeah.
360 teachers?
360 teachers,
And how many
Then we're worse than the state.
154.
Divide 360 by, what does it come to?
The ultimate,
In quick
360
math,
divided by,
it's surprisingly equal to, when I
29.4.
showed the statistics, one of the things that the Secretary Holcomb presented in her presentation that I've been giving back at some of the board meetings is they talk about student-teacher ratios, but they also talk about adult-to-student ratio. So I think we're somewhere in the 4.8 to 5 range per student, which is very close to what the state of Vermont, I think she said it was 4.7 adults per student. And she used the example that if they could get it over 5, it would be a $75 million savings to the ed fund.
She said.
everybody says the state of Vermont is 10 students per teacher. So just by these numbers here, we have 60 too many teachers, based on,
Yeah.
the lowest ratio in the country being 10. The supervisory union is way beyond that.
We are going to
Way
give
below
you,
that.
we are going to give you future meetings that, because we have, the Vermont number is 8.2 teachers per student. So I want to see what it is for, down from 10.2 10 years ago. So it is on a decline. So I need to take those numbers, and that's what I've said in Shaftesbury and in Bennington, and I'll say in Powell tomorrow night. The next step is to take those statewide statistics and see how they play out here, and not guess at them, but really see what those numbers are, because we have that information.
I always like to say when these things come up, I never had a class of less than 40 kids in my, when I was elementary.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's 8 kids in a classroom, 1
Yeah,
teacher,
yeah.
because the education's delivered in a different way today. You have, you have specialists who are doing, intensive training with students, and then they're counted into that count also,
That's
so.
So your actual classrooms numbers per teacher are much higher than that.
Right, I think, I just know off the top of my head, I believe in Bennington, the kindergartens are 17, 18 to 1, somewhere
Right.
around there. And Ed had his hand up, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
go
we got
ahead.
him off.
what I'd really like to see, and it's not your job to deliver it, but the legislature and the Department of Education ought to provide a list of all the mandates that we have to comply with that result in additional personnel that we're paying for locally.
You mean like universal pre-K?
Yeah.
Well, you ask them at that legislative breakfast. In
Yeah.
fact, we
You
can
know,
tell them to bring it with them.
They vote for all these feel-good things that we pay for down here, and they ought to at least be able to produce a list.
I believe there was actually a study several years back commissioned by the legislature, but of course, it's already out of date because things have happened in the interim, like the pre-K programs, that will increase those numbers. I don't know what, I don't think I ever saw the study, but I know that there was supposed to be one constructed. And I think it would be useful if we could get it and see what they said at that point in time.
Okay.
Are we under other?
Well, I'm just gonna, well,
Okay.
yeah, you've got the,
I got an item
just so
on
you know,
top.
the SVSU budget status report's in there, and our next meeting is on December 16th. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, that we should, all of the local boards, as well as the supervisory, should be doing all we can do to get more people attending our budget meetings. Where so that we don't run into a shock, and as we're building these budgets, it would be nice if we could get people in the community to come in and attend these meetings.
Talk right into that camera.
So that's the
So you
point
need
that we're
to-
trying to make. The meetings are open, they're advertised, they're warned, and we welcome any member of the community that wants to come forward and give us help and their thoughts and concerns. Thank you.
Are the materials for those budget committee meetings, I know usually they're just coming hot off the press, but they are posted on the website.
Yeah, I mean, we can have, I'm sure we can have handouts if we know we're gonna have public. We can make sure they have the same thing we're getting.
Yeah.
And then they can ask questions or whatever, so. Larry?
Budget meeting this week?
Well, that's,
I
might
will,
be on hold.
you're gonna get an email from us one way or the other. My last word that I heard was it is postponed.
Okay. You know, I want to publicly thank the board for coming together in executive session, and it's a good sign of working together. I do appreciate it, and thank you.
Well, I wanted to mention that Ken Swihart is home.
Yes.
Coming along fine, and will be joining our board very soon.
Perfect.
Thank you.
With him yesterday.
Need a motion to, thank you. Leon, in a second?
Second.
There you go. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, perfect.
Agenda. Timeline, is it every Thursday?